Let's kick off the hour talking about an issue that's on the ballot this November, and it deals with voting districts and designing and creating those districts after the census each decade. That's part of the law, is that the population changes, and every beginning of each decade, there's a brand new set of congressional, state house, state senate, and other lines that are drawn. And there's a ballot proposal this fall that has been approved. And I hear today, I guess they're still debating on the language that's going to go actually on the ballot. It's called Voters Not Politicians, and its presentation, the idea behind what they're saying is that they somehow want to get gerrymandering out of drawing the district lines. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a huge debate over this issue and going all the way back hundreds of years in American politics. And I have a guest today that's going to help us understand this, maybe give us a little background, help us understand what's going on. This is Tony Daunt with the Michigan Freedom Fund. Hey, Tony, welcome to the program.
Hey, good evening, James. Thanks for having me on. And I must say, for somebody that's just guest hosted a few times, you sound like a natural. So
hey,
you guys better watch out.
Oh man, well, it's a total blast, and I've had a lot of people tell me that, hey, I do okay at this, so that's why I keep coming back and doing it. But man, I couldn't do it as a full-time gig. I got too many other things going on. Anyway, thanks for the encouragement there. Appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about, and I know personally, I've been involved in politics in Michigan for 30 years, and I've been through the 1990 redistricting, the 2000 redistricting, the 2010 redistricting, all the 2000 and 2010 were when Republicans had a majority. In 1990, there was a split, and I remember both parties complaining that certain candidates got redistricted right out of majority districts and complaining about gerrymandering. So this isn't new. It goes way back. And this proposal ostensibly is supposed to help us get beyond that. So give us the truth behind this Voters Not Politicians proposal.
Happy to do so. As you mentioned, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but, as you mentioned, this is a process that happens every 10 years once the census is taken. And then it is our law states that the legislature draws those lines. And that's the way it is in the majority of states in the country, that the state legislature provides the district lines for the state Senate, the state House, as well as the congressional districts. And it is true that there are folks on both sides of the aisle, depending on what state you're in and who controls the lines, that have complained about this process ever since the founding of our country. This is something that is in the Constitution and is set up to be handled a certain way by the states.
Yeah, and the chief protagonist there was Eldridge Gerry, and he was the guy that got called on the carpet for doing that. And so I know that there's been laws, and I know in Michigan the A-poll standards were adopted in 1970s because there were some complaints about gerrymandering, and those seem to have worked very well up until just recently, or at least that's what they're saying. What do you think is the reason behind this proposal?
Well, quite honestly, from my perspective, and I will stipulate, there may be a better way to draw the lines here in the state of Michigan. And that there may be. But what I will say is this proposal is absolutely not the way to do that. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first is that this thing, and I was over at the Board of Canvassers meeting where the 100 words, as it's called, were being determined, and that's what will go on the ballot that people read when they go into the voting booth.
And there's a big fight over what those words should be so that it represents it accurately.
That is correct. And as we saw from the proponents throughout the process this afternoon, they are very much interested in getting buzzwords and having the slant that they prefer, that they think will help slant people into a yes vote, into that 100 words. And we were happy at the Freedom Fund. We solidly oppose Proposal 2, which this proposal is numbered.
Okay.
And we were generally happy with what the Bureau of Elections came up with in the 100 words and stated as much. Unfortunately, there was quite a hassle, and the folks who are the biggest supporters of this, had trouble explaining succinctly and adequately what this thing does in 100 words. So the complexity and confusion is one of the biggest reasons. The other is that there are many thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not north of 1 million people who could be excluded from this supposed citizen panel by virtue of being active in local politics, by being a precinct delegate, by being a township trustee. And on top of that, the folks who are related to them, whether they be their parents, their children, or their spouse, or their stepchildren. And that's just an absolutely ridiculous thing to claim that you are setting up a system for citizens to control the redistricting process, and then you go about excluding maybe 1 million, maybe more than 1 million fit folks just by virtue of what they do or who they're related to.
Wow. So backing up a little bit then, the proposal sets up a separate commission composed of a certain number of people who have to be non-party, political party related, supposedly, then along with some, or they can have a party affiliation, but they can't be an actual active participant in partisan politics.
Correct.
And then they randomly select out of those things, but they have to have a certain number of independents too. And all of these people have to be, seems to me, they're going to be selected randomly from the population. So most of them are going to know absolutely nothing about how redistricting is supposed to happen, which is going to leave them at the mercy of whoever the current Secretary of State is. Is that true?
That is pretty much exactly right. And this idea that it is independent, again, is very misleading. And the simple fact of the matter is there are 13 members of this commission, and 4 of them are folks who self-identify as Republicans, 4 who self-identify as Democrats. So that is 8 of the 13. That is a majority partisan makeup. And then there are 5 who self-identify as independent. So that puts light to this issue that it's independent right there. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, the folks who do this, you're cutting out the people who are the most active in politics. And I'm not talking about defending politicians, people at the state rep, state senate level, right, who have drawn these. I'm simply talking about people who are local precinct delegates, who they sign up and they vote, and they get 6 people to vote for them, and then they go knock doors for their preferred candidate, whether that be a Republican or a Democrat.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the other thing is that these A-poll standards that have been used up to now, I've heard a couple of people argue that those actually kept the Republicans who had the control from drawing districts that would have given them a greater majority.
Indeed, the A-poll standards require that if you must, that uses the county as the primary building block, and if you must break up a county, you then have to break as few of the municipalities as possible, and if you have to break municipalities, then you break as few of the precincts within there. And redistricting and the lines are based on population. It's equal population within Congress. And then for the state Senate and state House lines, there's a slight variation in the terms of number, but for all intents and purposes, they are equal number of voters. And wow, there are strict laws in terms of the Voting Rights Act on how you must draw lines to preserve the voting rights and the power of the voting rights of minorities, whether that be African Americans or Hispanic individuals, or in Dearborn, Arab Americans. Yeah. And so it's unfortunately it's a solution in looking for a problem, and it's cynical. And I think once folks know how many people are excluded from the supposed citizens panel, they'll question the motives and vote no on it.
And we only have less than a minute, but I also noticed that this somehow takes away the ability for the Supreme Court or any other judicial body to review these and to rule on them, or is that true?
We are basically, as I understand it, we are basically setting up the Secretary of State as a redistricting czar. And you kind of touched on it a little earlier, that these folks who get drawn or who are selected to be on this commission, I'm sure a good number of them will be ignorant of the process. And I don't say that in a pejorative sense. I mean, they just won't know.
Sure.
And so the Secretary of State is a partisan elected individual. And therefore, we're setting up a partisan elected individual to basically serve as the guru, the czar for the supposed independent commission.
Wow. So we have to go, but where can people go to get more information on this?
Well, certainly go to MichiganFreedomFund.com. I believe we have some things on there. And if not, we have a place to sign up for our email blast, and we certainly talk about this quite often.
MichiganFreedomFund.com. Tony, thanks for being on. We got to run, my friend, so appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, James.
Okay, and we'll be right back after these messages.